Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode number 27 of Dive Talk. Today I'm hosting by myself, and the main reason for that is because, right after we came back from that trip in Cozumel that you heard on the last episode of the podcast, which was about cave diving. By the way, that episode got a lot of great reviews, so thank you so much to those of you who listened to the episode and took the time to, reach back and ask questions or tell us what they thought about it. I really love talking about cave diving. Obviously, I really love cave diving as well, and, be able to kind of share our experiences and lessons we learn, and also prevent people from going into caves if they're not trained in order to do, cave diving. So thank you so much once again for listening to that. But after we came back from Cozumel, Woody went back to diving like the next week, or within 5 days or so, or 3 days. I think we arrived on like a Wednesday, and he was diving back during the weekend. He was getting or becoming a Sidewinder instructor during that trip. And we started tinkering with the Sidewinder. I came up with an idea to make it what I call a backwinder, which means mount the bailout tank on the back. And I don't want to get super technical because if you don't know what I'm talking about, basically I wanted to reconfigure his rebreather in order to make it better for boat diving, in my opinion and his opinion. A lot of people have tried something like this. I came up with a new design. We tried it in the pool. It just didn't work out. So he's kind of busy dealing with that, putting it back together and all of that. And the reason for that is because next week we're going on a dive trip. We're going back to Pensacola. We're going to, try to eradicate the entire Gulf of Mexico of lionfish. Hopefully, we are, back with a vengeance. We kill a bunch of those guys in Cozumel, but I'm looking forward to going back to Pensacola for 3 days and murder as many lionfish as possible. They're destroying reef. They're a pest here in the U.S. and in the Caribbean. If you're listening, from overseas and you don't understand what's happening, basically I'll give you the abbreviated story of lionfish hunting in this side of the world. Basically what happened is lionfish were nowhere near this side of the world in the Caribbean or anything like that. They didn't, they didn't evolve here, so they weren't available or present here in the water. But because they're beautiful, because lionfish are beautiful, they are very popular in aquariums, personal aquariums and whatnot here in the U.S. So people and companies and whatnot had them. Some restaurants had them, just to show them around. And at some point, they either got sick of them or they just didn't want to maintain them anymore or whatever it was. And the easiest thing to do was, instead of killing it, they just dumped it right at sea. So I assume this started in Florida somewhere. I think this started back in the 70s or 80s or something like that. Somebody dumped a few lionfish, 3, 4, whatever, and then somebody else did it again. So it's something that started with just a handful of lionfish a couple decades ago. Now is essentially millions and millions of lionfish out there on this side of the world with no predators. Like, none of our groupers and sharks or whatever know what to do with them. They're brand new to the environment, so they're like, I don't know how to eat you. But they know how to eat the little fish. So the other fish are having a hard time procreating. They're having a hard time, essentially growing, because lionfish are eating them all. And, lionfish just keep coming and keep growing and growing and growing without predators. The only predator that is out there to stop the growth and the destruction of the environment, essentially, in this side of the world, is humans. So governments and organizations and agencies and everyone encourages people, divers, to go down there and kill as many lionfish as possible. We do this with pole spears. We go down there and we essentially kill them and put them in this thing called a zookeeper, or a containment unit, basically. And you just get to go and kill as many as possible. You're helping the environment by doing that. And having rebreathers is awesome, just amazing when it comes to a mission like going down there and killing as many lionfish as you can, because we can stay down for a long time. One example is a dive we did in Cozumel, where we went hunting for lionfish. It was a dive down to 135 feet. So that's 40, I don't know, 42, 43 meters, something like that. And we were down there for 2 hours and 31 minutes. So 2 hours and 31-minute dive, and we killed hundreds of lionfish. We hit, in just that one dive, we hit 12 dive sites, right? It's called Palancar in Mexico. There's 12 different sites to go to in Palancar, and we hit them all. We started in one tip of Palancar and came out right at the end, and in the process we killed hundreds of lionfish, which is great, again, for the environment. So that was good, and again, beautiful that we have these amazing machines called rebreathers, KISS rebreathers in our case, and we get to do that safely and love it. I mean, if you love diving, you want to do it for longer, and and do something that you love. I can only imagine if I had a regular open circuit tank at 135 feet, like the most I can stay is like 5 minutes, right? Before I start hitting my decompression limits and before I run out of air, to be honest. I mean, at that depth, you're going through your air so fast. So it doesn't, like, people are always like, well, you don't really have to use a rebreather. You can just take doubles or side mounts or whatever. It's like, even with doubles or side mount, even if you have doubles 120s cubic feet, like the biggest tanks you can come up with, it will be a handful of minutes that you can be at that depth before you start going up. Whereas we can stay, for an hour at depth, and then obviously you have to deco on your way up on the wall. But regardless, it's just way better. So I'm a huge fan of rebreathers, and we've talked about rebreathers here on the show. So next week we're going to Pensacola, like I mentioned. We're diving with the crew at Shark Quest, which are a great operator. We've worked with them before. Again, this show is not sponsored by anybody. So whatever products or places or things I announce are because I legitimately like them, or me and Woody, legitimately like them and like working with them. So we're not sponsored by anyone. The guys at Shark Quest are great because they're also rebreather divers. So when we go, they have a smaller boat that essentially becomes a tech boat. So we're all rebreather divers. Even our guide, Nick and Eric over there at Shark Quest, they jump in the water, either one of them, and they have rebreathers. So we can do those 2.5 hour long dives with a guide, which is a struggle sometimes when we travel as a team and we have a bunch of people with rebreathers and the guide is just looking at us with an aluminum 80, right? Like, I don't know what to do. And, to be honest with you, some operators like Pura Vida, for example, in West Palm Beach, they do a great job with this. They essentially send a guide down, and they have a big tank, and they stay as long as possible, like an hour and something, and then that guide comes up, and then another guy jumps in, with the next tank and stays with us up to 2 hours and something, and then we come out. I think the longest dive that I've been like that with multiple guides has been about 2 hours and 48 minutes, I think it was. Drift dive in Florida, which was, awesome. So some operators are willing to, bend the rules, not bend the rules, but accommodate, I guess, for rebreather divers. If like the whole boat is diving rebreathers, they'll figure out a way to make it happen. And obviously a lot of the people that are diving on those boats are, very experienced. Like in a lot of cases, I mean, you don't really need a guide on a lot of these drift dives. You're just in a wall and you're drifting. Like the current is pushing you. Like, what's the guide gonna do? Like, oh look, there's a lobster. Oh look, that. Like, they'll just point to stuff and they'll tell us when it's time to come up. So in a lot of cases, we could really self-guide in some of those dives, but, we understand that for safety reasons or whatever, they want to have someone down there, and, they're willing to accommodate. But Shark Quest is cool because they're rebreather divers too. So the guide can stay with us the whole time, which is great. We appreciate those guys, and we're going to be there next week again, diving with them for 3 days and killing as many lionfish as possible. The other thing that we're doing that we're excited about, me and Woody, as you probably know, we've talked about this before, we've bought DPVs or scooters. I feel like we got to a point where it was like, swimming is dumb. Let's just get scooters and sip around these large wrecks. When you think of wrecks like the Oriskany, which is the largest wreck in the world, which is in Pensacola, or off the coast of Pensacola. If you think of even the Spiegel Grove down in the Keys, like some of these wrecks, if you want to see the whole thing and do like penetrations and things like that, obviously you need a rebreather just so you can stay there for longer. But at the same time, there's some current in those wrecks as well, even though it's on the Keys. And in order to see the whole thing, having a DPV would be massive help. So we're excited about that, and obviously for caves, DPVs on caves are great. The caves that we dive have a lot of flow, and they're trying to push you away, so you're literally just pulling yourself into the cave. With a DPV, with a scooter, you can just crank that up in 9 or 9 plus or whatever the highest speed is, and go for it. So our DPVs actually arrived 5 or 4 days ago. They're down in Florida, and we have to go get them. So the trip to Pensacola will also serve to pick up our DPVs and test them around, which is awesome. So we're looking forward to that tremendously. So that's pretty much the update. Oh, one more thing I wanted to add. I wanted to thank the people at Orca Torch, by the way. They reached out to us, and they asked me and Woody to test some of their new lights coming out. I guess they appreciate the fact that we dive in all these different environments, and they wanted to, essentially give us a few of the new models that are coming out so we can try them out and give them real world, feedback that they can use to make better lights, to enhance them in the future. Even those models that we might be testing can be tweaked before they go live to the public, based on our feedback, because we put those things to the test. I mean, we really take them deep. We take them into sketchy places. We take them into 1,000, 2,000 feet into a cave, turn off all the lights, and let's see how it performs compared with other brands. And again, we're not sponsored by anyone. Even Orca Torch is not paying us to do it. They're just asking for us to do it. They're asking for a favor, and we're gonna test it, and we're gonna give them real world feedback. We agreed to post the feedback on our YouTube channel. So if you're not subscribed to our YouTube channel, please go check that out. Just go to YouTube and search for Dive Talk. The channel is growing tremendously. We're getting more subscribers to our YouTube channel than we're getting to the podcast. So if you haven't subscribed to the YouTube channel, please go ahead and check that out, because we'll be, once again, posting our reviews of the Orca Torches that are coming out, or that are already out very recently, and people are thinking about, should I get this new one or not? Well, we're going to check that out. I dive Orca Torches as my backup lights on cave dives, and my main lights on regular just ocean dives, because they're very convenient, very small, and they're built like a tank. Like, they just won't break. They'll work every time. They're awesome. So I'm looking forward to testing what they're sending us and providing real world feedback. And like I said, look, I dive Big Blue. It's my main light for caves. And if I'm doing night diving, I'm going to take my Big Blue as my main light, and Orca Torch will be the backup. So I'm excited to see if these new Orca Torches have the potential to be a primary light, not just be a backup, but check out how they perform. If you're listening to this and you work for a product, if you are in the dive industry and you want someone to just test the product and give you 100% honest review, like, we will never, ever change our opinion based on getting a free product. Like, if you just want to give us a free product because you think we're going to automatically give you a good review, then don't even contact us. We're not interested. The only thing we want to do is we want to improve the dive industry and make it safer. So if we can give you real world honest feedback on your product that will make it better and safer for divers out there, we're interested in doing that. We don't mind taking stuff, into caves. We don't mind taking stuff everywhere. We dive all the time. I think right after like full-time dive instructors and dive guides, that's people like me and Woody. I mean, we're diving almost every weekend or every other weekend, and we get after it. Just again, if you have a product that you want us to test that is meant to be safer and making dive safer or more fun, we're always open for that. So this is my calling to you. If you're interested, send us an email, info@divetalkmedia.com. That's our email address, info@divetalkmedia.com. and we'll check that out. Lastly, next week's video. People have been asking for this. I don't want to lie and say, oh, a lot of you have been asking. No, but we've had about 10 to 20 people ask us to post video of our dives and our adventures to Dive Talk, because if you look at our videos, most of them are just either me talking about things like, a video I found online with the top 7 most dangerous caves in the world, and I just talk about why they're dangerous or why they're not dangerous. In a lot of cases, they're not, and they're just exaggerated videos made by non-divers for clickbait, essentially, to get also non-divers to click on them. There was another one about Jacob's Well. There's another one about a dive accident that was interrupted by a dive, a safety diver, I guess, or a rescue diver. He prevented 2 deaths, and the video is awesome, and I reviewed that, and I gave my opinion on that. So those are the kinds of videos that we have on our YouTube channel. So people have been asking, again, 10 to 20 of you or so over time have asked, can you please post videos of your dives or your adventures? So this next trip to Pensacola, I'm actually planning, hopefully it happens, but I'm actually planning on shooting it, like vlog style. I'm going to shoot it from the beginning, like preparation for it, the drive there, where we're staying, everything. I want people to understand what a tech dive trip looks like, which is completely different than a recreational dive trip. I know it sounds stupid. I know you're listening to this and you're like, why would it be different? Just because you're diving deeper and longer, or you have a rebreather, it should be the same thing. It's not the same thing. There are some things that are different and different struggles that you have to go through in order to make these tech dive trips happen. And again, it's just hopefully is informational and entertaining at the same time, because you'll get to see us in person and how we look in real life, and this the kind of stuff that we like to do every month, or every twice a month, or whenever we can. So I'm going to try to record that one as a vlog, as an adventure. I don't know how long the video is going to be, but that's what I'm going for. I'm planning to shoot video on the surface, and I'm planning to shoot video underwater too. Now, obviously, especially if we have our DPVs with us, because we're picking them up before we get to Pensacola, like on the way to Pensacola. They're in Mariana, Florida. If I have a spear, a Zookeeper, a DPV, and a camera on top of that, that's going to be interesting. So I might have to delegate like a cameraman, one of the other divers that are going to be on the group. There's 4 of us going so far. Maybe can carry the camera while I deal with everything else. We'll see. It's a lot of multitasking. So, and obviously on top of that, I'm diving a rebreather, which is manual, mechanical rebreather. So it's not automatically working for me. I need to manually dive my rebreather, my DPV, my spear, my Zookeeper, and my camera, all combined. All right, so we'll see how that goes. To wrap up the episode, I just wanted to cover an excellent article that I've been meaning to cover with you. But every time I have Woody, I take advantage of him being here to talk about things like cave diving and other stuff. But this article is on a magazine called Alert Diver Magazine. It comes from essentially Dan, the Divers Alert Network that all of you are probably members of. And back in let me see, this is from the first quarter of 2020. I've been saving it since then. I get it, every quarter essentially. This one has some really good stuff. It has, an interview with Jill Heinerth, which is an explorer, cave diver. A lot of people know about her. She wrote the book Into the World, I think it's called, and great book. And, it has a lot of really good articles. But there's a 1-page article that was written by Olivia Jackson and Stephanie Martina. And I want to give him a shout out because they did a really, really good job with this article. Because and the reason why I singled this out is because this was one of my fears when I started diving. And I don't know how many of you listening to this have the same fear. I don't think everyone does. I don't think this is a common thing. But I think a lot of people just go diving and they don't really care or think about what could happen to them. But to me, and it's not that I had like a close call, like, oh my God, I was left in the surface alone for an hour one time. No, but I've heard many stories. I've read things out there where divers get lost and whatever. And it was enough that for me, I knew I had to do something. And there's a reason why every time you go boat diving, during the safety brief, the boat captain talks about if you come out and you don't see the boat, if you come out and you're alone or whatever. These are the frequencies for the radio. If another boat picks you up, tell them that you are with insert name of dive operator here. We are on channel 17 and channel 20, whatever it is. Like, you hear the safety briefing, and I always pay attention to that because I don't know why I always have the notion that that could happen to me, that I'm going to come out at some point and I'm going to be alone. And granted, it's happened a bunch of times that I come out with my SMB, on a little group, like the group got detached from the main group or whatever, and it takes 10 minutes or whatever for the boat to come and get us because they're getting the other group first or whatever. Like, that happens a lot. I'm not concerned about those times. Those times are easy. If I have an SMB and that's enough for the boat to see me, that's not a sketchy situation. That's just diving. There's nothing wrong with that, and I don't mind waiting if they can see me. But the fear is if you come out and they can see you. What if you come out on a night dive, for example, and your SMB is not, you don't have like a cam light or something that you can attach to it. By the way, all of you that has SMBs or surface market buoys, if you notice they have like a transparent little flap towards the tip of the SMB, a lot of people don't know that that's so you can insert a light, whether it's a cam light or one of those stick lights that they sell everywhere, every store or whatever is, they use like watch batteries, little tiny button batteries, and you can turn them on. You can stick a light on the tip of that thing. So if you're coming out on a night dive, or perhaps you're coming out late afternoon, like it's almost to the point that the sea starts turning really dark and you really can't see an SMB from the distance, you can stick a light on that thing. That's why I always, in every one of my BCDs and my rebreather, I have one of those stick lights hanging. It's always off because I never need it, but if I need it, I can just twist it, it's on, I can stick it on my SMB, whatever it is to make myself more visible. So I have this fear, especially, again, when I was a newish diver and I started to dive at sea, that at some point this could happen to me. And let me just give you the title of the article. It's pretty straight to the point, 2 words: separated divers. That's the name of the article. And once again, shout out to Olivia Jackson and Stephanie Martina who wrote this article. So I want to read it to you. And again, let's talk about what it means to be separated. They wrote a story essentially about separation that happens, some things to think about and what things we can learn. And I also want to talk to you about what I did in order to feel more comfortable and more at ease with the fact that I could potentially get separated, right? What is it that I decided to do essentially in order to get around that? All right, so here's the article, and quote, "With sunny skies and 1-foot seas, the day was perfect for a wreck dive in the Gulf of Mexico. By the time our 20-foot boat," that's not a huge boat by the way, "arrived at the site 2 miles offshore, however, dark storm clouds were forming in the distance. We previously monitored the weather and checked numerous online forecasts while slowly prepping our gear. There were no signs of an imminent threat, so we proceeded with our dive plan. One person stayed behind for topside support. He had the demanding role of supervising our safety, which included vigilant weather monitoring in case degrading conditions require us to abort the dive. We surfaced 30 minutes later to noticeably stronger winds, larger swells, and darkening skies. We quickly stowed our gear and prepared for a turbulent return trip. Several other boats that had been at the site were now gone, except for one smaller boat in the distance with the dive flag still flying. It was getting battered by the waves and nearly capsized from several broadside hits. It appeared that the divers hadn't surfaced yet and that no one was managing the boat." I mean, think about that. A just lone boat out there, tiny boat, getting battered by sea while the divers are just down there living life. "An uneasy feeling came over to us. Large raindrops began to fall as the storm was now nearly overhead. We knew that it would be a long ride back to the shore, requiring thoughtful maneuvering and steady navigation to overcome the now 5-foot seas. As we nervously retreated, we scanned the waters for signs of divers. A diver soon surfaced about 20 feet away portside, which was nearly 500 feet from his boat. I mean, think about that on a storm. It's not a good deal. He was an older male holding a spear gun and wearing a blue camouflage wetsuit. We called out for him, signaled for an OK sign, and asked if he had a buddy. He was alert and kept fidgeting with the gear, but did not respond to us. His disorientation and fatigue were apparent. With a black sky rapidly approaching, we knew that conditions were going to worsen, but that we had to help. Without delay, our team jumped into action. 2 people on board kept an eye on the boat in the distance and scanned the water for more divers. The others monitored and reassured the diver. Our captain positioned the boat so we could throw a rescue line to the diver. Once we towed him in, we assisted him with gear removal. He handed off his spear gun initially without disengaging it, and he was slow to answer questions, reinforcing his distress. Shortly afterwards, we noticed that his dive buddy had made it back to their boat. That's awesome, by the way. Good job. We called it out and waved him down, and he quickly raced over to meet us, and he retrieved his dive buddy. His mood was surprisingly lighthearted, but ours was not. The storm was now upon us, and we had to expeditiously continue our departure, which prohibited us from learning what had happened with these 2 divers and what caused the vast buddy separation. The rescue diver was fatigued and would not have been able to make it back to his boat. This near-miss incident highlights numerous triggering events that could have escalated to cause an accident. And it's true. Like, think about that. So this guy, an older person, an older gentleman, let's say he was 60 or something like that. He comes out, he's tired, he's disoriented, 500 feet away from his boat, right? Or let's just say 150 meters if you don't use freedom units. So 150 meters from the boat, huge current, winds, 5-foot seas, right? How do you get back if you're exhausted back to the boat? And then the body comes out, surfaces on the boat. The boat's getting battered. Like, he's probably trying to keep the boat afloat. He's not, like, ignoring what's happening with the boat just to search for this body. And all he had to signal was his spear gun. Like, yeah, it was scary situation, right? So then they go into the importance of topside support. Back to the article. The first identifiable trigger was the decision to dive off a boat without a topside attendant. A quick search through scuba diving forums reveals that this is a hotly debated topic. I guess there's a lot of discussion about whether you should do it or not. Topside support plays numerous roles. Support ensures that the anchor holds and that the divers do not surface to find their boat floating out to sea. Support can also help divers with gear before and after the dive and with safe re-entry into the boat, which is critical in the event of an emergency. It can also help to limit heavy post-dive exertion, which can contribute to the development of decompression sickness. That's for sure. And that's one thing that we learn, especially when you go into tech diving. You have all these big tanks that you're carrying and all that stuff. You know, they always tell you, like, just leave the tanks behind. Like, not leave them behind, underwater. I'm just saying, like, bring them to the edge or, get to the boat and then let someone pull them out. Either dive buddies that are already on the boat or topside assistants, right? People that are on the boat that are dry, they're just there to help. Then, they can just go ahead and pull the tanks. Just hand them your tanks, hand them your camera, hand them your spear, whatever it is, just hand it to them. That way you can come out of the water safely. I've seen people hand off entire BCDs with tank and everything to the dive attendant because they were tired, they couldn't come out, whatever it is. I personally, unless the boat is equipped with what is called a tree type of ladder where you can climb up with your fins on, you don't have to take them off. I personally like to hand my fins. If I'm diving the rebreather, I like to hand the tanks, and I don't take off my rebreather. I come up with it. But if I had to, I have no problem taking it off and handing it up to the attendant as well. But that's the idea, is you can, you have someone who you can hand that to. But if you come up and the boat is empty, that's all on you, right? So keep that into perspective. Topside support serves as a liaison, keeping watch for changing weather conditions and signaling to divers if a retreat is required. A dive plan should include a discussion of topside signals. For example, using continuous bang with a wrench or tool on the side of the boat to tell divers to surface. And they do this during the dive briefing, by the way. The safety briefing, they tell you that they're going to bang the ladder or whatever. What's the recall procedure, essentially? They tell you what to do and to come out as quick as possible. Let's see. Okay, to tell divers to surface, along with dive time and contingency plans, which should be agreed upon and communicated between the divers and support. During the dive, support can be on bubbles watch and monitor the divers ascend according to plan and at the boat. If a diver ascends far from the boat, as was in the case of, the scenario we just read, support can be pulled the anchor and navigate to the diver. In the case of a missing diver, topside support can promptly call for help. They need to know how to operate the vessel and should be familiar with the diver's equipment, dive plan, and emergency procedures. The vessel should have a first aid kit and an emergency oxygen unit, and support should have been training on how to use them. Topside support should also know the boat's starting position before moving to initiate a search. If the search and rescue efforts are required, this information will be important for the rescuers. I've only been on a boat once that we left unattended. I've only done that once, and it was in St. Bart's. I was in St. Bart's in the Caribbean, and it was a very, very small operator. I reached out to them, and obviously the guy who owned the boat was also the instructor, dive guide, director of first impressions. He did everything. So it was a small group. There were only 4 of us diving that day, and it was the guy that drove or whatever, navigated on the boat, was the dive guide also for that dive. So there were 2 guys. I think they were from Europe. I think they were from France, actually, and me and the owner of the boat, the operator. And he tied into a moray line, he tied into a line, and then we just jumped in and did the dive, and then came out on the boat. He came out first, which was odd because I feel like as a guide or whatever, you want to be last and make sure everyone is on. However, he did make sure that we were all up on the surface, and he had a line on the side of the boat. We were all hanging onto it, inflated BCDs. So he made sure everything was safe, essentially. And the sea wasn't bad. Obviously, the sea conditions were good where we went. And he jumped on the boat first, and then he helped us out of the boat. And that was good. It was an open circuit dive. It was good stuff. All right, back to the article. It's almost over. When diving from a boat, it is prudent for each diver to carry a surface marker buoy, and it's actually mandatory if you do it in Florida and in a lot of places. You have to have it or they won't let you dive. Whistle and a flashlight. A separated diver can use these items to increase their visibility, which is crucial for successful rescue efforts. Consider high visibility when selecting gear for use. Most of the gear is black, I feel like, wetsuits, all that stuff. It's hard to find hoodies that are not black. I mean, honestly, whenever I see someone that has one of those hoodies that are like high vis, like crazy yellow and orange or whatever, I'm like, oh, I know who they are. I'm like, I can see them because no one else has it. And, I appreciate the fact that they're wearing that. It's a safety thing, right? The take-home message, just to wrap up the article, is diving and boating involves some level of risk. Good divers are skilled at risk mitigation and management. When we fail to do this, we often neglect the risk imposed on our buddies and rescuers. The fate of the diver in this story might have been much different had we not seen or been in the vicinity. Have we not seen them or been in the vicinity, and much worse for us if we had not made it out of the worsened post-rescue weather conditions. Well, imagine if these divers stayed together, and once again, thank you for the article to Olivia Jackson and Stephanie Martina from Divers Alert Network. Imagine if they came out and that little boat that was battered by the waves was actually sinking, or it was battered so bad that it was non-operational. The engine wasn't working, or maybe it got pushed away from the mooring line and now it's floating out in the distance. Instead of being 500 feet away, is, a quarter of a mile away. I mean, what do you do? Now, They say that they were 2 miles offshore. If you can see the shore, I feel that 2 miles would be horrible. It would be a super long swim. But, I've done almost 2 mile swims in caves before. We've talked about this in one of our episodes. It took hours, but it is possible. Now, if the current is pushing you away from the edge, or from the shore, you're really swimming like, 4, 5, 6 miles just to cover 2 miles. I mean, I feel like I'm in a physical condition level that I can make it. Eventually. It won't be in a record-breaking time, but I can make it eventually. So 2 miles offshore is good, but some of these dives are way, way out there. Very way out there. I don't know how far the Oriskany is offshore. I'm going to look it up just here really quick so we can talk about it. How far is the Oriskany offshore? I just figured what it is, and this is not saying anything. Here it is, 35 to 40 miles. Okay, so 35 to 40 miles away from shore. If you surface 35, 40 miles away from shore, 60 kilometers from shore, what do? You don't even know. You can't even see the shore. It's not like you're like, well, it's going to be horrible, but I'm just going to go and start swimming and hope for the best. Okay, but to where? Where are you going to swim to? Obviously, if you say, well, I'm gonna, I figure that if I'm in Florida and I'm in the Gulf of Mexico, Pensacola is always gonna be north because north of Pensacola is land. So I'll just set my compass to north and start swimming north. Okay, that's smart that you're doing that, but drifting you can't really rely on self-rescuing 40 miles offshore. It's just not going to work. So you have to be prepared for it. And like I said, this was one of those things that I was concerned about. When I was a new diver, I was hesitant always to depend just on my boat and topside support for rescuing me or for spotting me. I had an SMB. I actually have 2 of them. SMBs, and they're both like really, really big, tall SMBs. I want to make sure that I'm very visible. Always carry lights with me in every dive. Always carry those stick lights that I can stick on the SMBs as well. I'm always ready to go. But on top of that, I decided to make it safer. I decided to, have something that I can rely on it better. So back, I would say, I don't know, within 6 months or so of getting certified, I purchased a Nautilus Marine Rescue GPS. I don't know if it's called a Nautilus Lifeline Marine GPS. And essentially, if you haven't seen this, it's a device that you can trigger, and it essentially calls boats around you. So the Nautilus Marine GPS it's a little plastic device. It's a consolidated unit. It comes with a battery and a transmitter and all of that. And what you do is, if you ever need it, you take a cap off and you essentially eject this antenna, this massive antenna that is all coiled up into the unit. You release this antenna and it will broadcast your location up to 34 miles away. Okay, and apparently the GPS positioning system on it is very accurate within 1.5 meters or 5 feet. Let's just say 4.5 feet. So that's pretty good. Like if I can get a boat 5 feet from me, trust me, like they don't have to see me. I'm gonna find a way to hang on to the boat. All right, but they will see me because I have the SMB and all of that. They'll see me from hundreds of feet away. So 5 feet. It's plenty. It's very, very accurate. I've never used it, obviously, on an emergency, but I have one of them. I have the Nautilus Lifeline. I actually bought the one that comes with the case on it. It's like a neoprene pouch, and I have it attached in my tank band. So I have it in my tank band, or depending on the BCD that I'm using, I have it either on my tank band or I have it on my trim weight pocket band. And I can reach it, or my buddy can reach it in my back. And it comes with a lanyard that stretches, basically a coil lanyard, and you can pull it out and activate it all while attached to your BCD, which is great. It's not very cheap, but to me, kind of the peace of mind was something that made me, go for it. And I think, over time, the way I thought about it is $205 by the way. At least in Amazon. I checked on the price right now. The package that I bought is $205, $204.95. A lot of dive shops sell these, by the way. So I would check first with your local dive shop. I just wanted to give you an idea. So that's why I went to Amazon. I don't really remember where I bought this. Maybe I bought it on Amazon. I don't know. But it was a long time ago. And it comes, like I said, complete. You can just hit it and it would deploy an antenna and it would work. You don't have to pay anything monthly or whatever. You just buy it. So the way I thought about it was I said, look, it's $205. But if this thing, let's say it lasts 205 dives, it's $1 a dive. Well, $1 extra per dive makes me feel safer knowing that if something happens, I come up, the boat's too far, whatever. My SMB on the way up, I don't know, hit a lionfish because they're idiots and it's speared and now it's deflated and it doesn't work. I don't know. Whatever. Imagine the worst, thing that can happen. It's worth $1 extra per dive to have something that will help people find me. And, if I'm in the middle of the ocean. And the answer was yes. So I bought it. I carry it with me on dives. The pouch, it used to be beautiful orange, is now, I would say, I don't know, like skin color, like white skin type of color is like all faded because it's been to many dives. And I've actually owned it for about 380, 400 dives so far. So, if you think about how much it cost per dive, is less than $1, which has been great. However, last year, I think it was early in the year, I was going to the Maldives, as I've mentioned before on previous episodes, and I was like, look, the Maldives it's big. Like, you get lost out there, and there's probably an island close by. Actually, I was going to Egypt. When I booked my trip to Egypt, I'm like, I don't know, how far we need to go on Egypt. I don't know. Like, we're going to be on a liveaboard that can be in the middle of the ocean. And if the liveaboard collapses and sinks, how are we going to call for help? So I was kind of like, I don't know how things are in Egypt. I don't know exactly how this thing is going to be. Although I know from liveaboards, they like to be in coves. They like to be close to land anyway, if possible. But again, just me being extra safe. I'm like, I wonder if 30-something miles, 34 miles is enough. And again, that's the advertised range. The range could be less than that, could be 30. I don't know. But I was like, maybe the Nautilus is not good enough for every situation. By the way, the Nautilus can go down to 450 feet or something. So in terms of depth, this thing works regardless of the diving that you're doing. I guess if you're diving to 1,000 feet, then it won't work. But I think if you're doing that, you'll probably have the National Geographic team monitoring your dive. So you don't have to worry about it. But so in terms of depth and all of that is good. However, once you open it to deploy the antenna and stuff, I'm not really sure how waterproof or how good it is to handle water once the whole mechanism is open and transmitting. Because again, it deploys that antenna in the air and it's completely wide open to be found. So if you have 5 foot, 6, 10 foot seas, and I wish Woody was here because I think he has a story when it was like 40 foot seas or something. How likely are you to keep it dry? I'm not really sure. So the waterproofing while the unit is sealed, no problem. But after it's open, I don't know. So, I just thought I wanted to get something new. However, I still recommend this product. It has 5-star reviews on Amazon, not 4.5, 5-star reviews on Amazon. People love this stuff. Very common. Great gift, by the way, for someone, a loved one that is a diver. If they don't have one, this will be a good gift to have. A lot of divers don't have it. And again, it's something you throw back on the band, of your tank or on your weight pocket or whatever on your pocket if you want to carry it. Some people I've seen they carry it right on the shoulder straps. I want to have it out of the way because the only way I'm going to need it is in an emergency, and I don't expect to have an emergency often. But if I do, I want to be able to reach it. So I just throw it in the back out of the way. But anyway, when I was going to Egypt, I'm like, okay, I need something better. So I upgraded. I upgraded to a Garmin InReach mini satellite communicator. So the satellite communicator obviously doesn't have the 34-mile restriction. This thing works all over the world. It's on the Iridium network of satellites, which covers 100% of the Earth. So no matter where you are, this thing works. Plus, it works on land, So if I don't know, hiking in the woods somewhere, and I fall and break my ankle, I could take this thing with me. It's tiny and call for help. So I like the fact that it works on land and that it works on, at sea as well. It has an SOS button. You hit that thing, and once again, they come get you. But you do have to pay a membership, every month to be able to use that. And I don't remember how much I pay, if it's $50 a month or $30 a month. It doesn't matter to me, to be honest, because I dive all the time. I think it's good to have it, so I don't care how much it costs at that point. But I have it, so it's an InReach Mini. It's more expensive than the Nautilus. Obviously, it's more capable too. You can text message out of it. You can let people know like I'm okay or whatever it is, which is great. And it's $317, $316.38 right now on Amazon. Obviously, like I said, some dive shops sell this. I think you're more likely on outdoor shops as well. If you want to buy it locally, I recommend you do that. So I bought this a year ago, and I'm taking it on every dive that I'm out, at sea or whatever. I only do the Nautilus if I am, with students and I'm out with a reputable dive operator, something like that. Like the chances are even smaller. But if I'm doing a 2.5-hour rebreather dive out there in high current or whatever, I take my my Garmin with me. So the Garmin, you have to get a case for it. The case is, let me check, $50. So the dive case is $50, and it goes down to 10 atmospheres or 100 meters essentially. So 330 feet, which is as deep as I want to go. So even if I go super deep dives, this thing will be able to hold. So it doesn't work on the water. It's the question I get every time when people see it in my pocket or whatever. I'm putting it in my pocket. They're like, oh, what is that? So I guess it's just a GPS communicator. And they're like, does it work on the water? No, you don't use it on the water. You come to the surface and then you call for help on the surface. It is waterproof, but it's only IPX7, which means it's only certified to be submerged down to 3 feet or 1 meter for 30 minutes. So the goal is, if I'm calling for help and I don't know, like I'm getting pushed around and he gets wet, I'm never going to submerge it more than a meter, and I'm never going to have it underwater for more than 30 minutes. So, I can have it in my hand. I have my hand out of the water, making sure that the connection is going, the communication is going. And then at that point, if I have to submerge it or whatever because I'm holding on to something or whatever, a wave comes over me and washes me off completely, the Garmin is still good to go, which is one thing I wasn't sure with the Nautilus. And some people I've seen complaining about it. It's like, oh, I was there, a wave came and it just killed it. I'm glad I was able to get picked up, but it got messed up. So anyway, the Garmin, I trusted a little bit more than the Nautilus, but I trust the Nautilus too, by the way. And the Garmin is pretty awesome. So once again, if you want to research this stuff, Garmin InReach, it's one word, INREACH, InReach Mini GPS satellite communicator. You have to get the case, or else if you take it on the water past 1 meter, it's dead. So you want to, make sure you have the dive case with it, and get the membership and use it. I took it to Maldives, and when I got to the resort, I turned it on to make sure that it connected to the satellites and all of that. Another thing, this has an internal battery, so every time before I go on a dive trip, like Pensacola next week, I'm going to plug it in, charge it completely. The Nautilus has an internal battery. So unless you're going to be opening this thing up, changing the battery for every trip to make sure that the battery is good, with the Garmin, I just charge it. I can see the battery indicator. It has a screen on it. Nautilus doesn't have a screen. I can see the battery indicator is full, good to go. Take it with me. Now I know it's full and is reliable and it's good to go. So that is the trick. You have to be aware of it. If I ever get disconnected, I always, whatever I land there, like whenever I get to Pensacola, I'm going to turn this on, make sure it connected to satellites, it located everything, and it's good to go before I go on a dive, and then I take it on a dive. The idea is if I really need it, I turn it on. It's still going to have to reconnect, but is based on the same kind of location, so it should, in theory, connect faster and allow me to transmit an SOS message to get someone to come get me. Granted, not everyone has this, and I love to be, the person that has this with me, because if it happens to me, I can make a call. If it happens to the team, they can rely on me to, get us rescued, essentially. This also worked, by the way, as our emergency called line, essentially, when we went to Eagle's Nest, which is a cave in the middle of Florida. There's no cell phone connection there at all. When you go to Beaufort Spring, another cave in kind of the same park where Eagle's Nest is located, middle of nowhere, no cell phone signal whatsoever. And the first thing I did is, here's my inReach Mini. If something happens, one of us gets bent or whatever, and I told him, here's where it's gonna be, in my left hand, in my left pocket. Take it out. Here's how it works. If I'm unconscious, this is how it works. Turn it on, wait until it connects, hit this SOS button or whatever, and people are going to come and get us. At least that's what Garmin says. So hopefully it works. Hopefully I never have to use it, though. But like I said, I feel that this is such a small price to pay to be extra safe. And I wanted to share this with you because I know some of you out there have felt the same. If you're like me, you felt like, man, what if I was in the middle of the ocean by myself? Like, how long can I stay alive? How long until people come and get me? And there's always stories about divers who spend 40 hours out at sea or whatever, and like they saw a faint light in the distance or whatever it is. I never want to be a victim because I wasn't prepared. If I'm diving and I have a heart attack, I get it. I didn't see that coming. Stuff like that happens. But I don't want to be a diver that dies or that has an accident that it was preventable just because I didn't have my gear ready to go. So I wanted to share that. I'm excited about the trip coming up next week. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel. Once again, go to Dive Talk. If you want to go direct, it's youtube.com/C for channel/Dive Talk. And you can get directly to it. Subscribe there because we're going to be dropping videos of the trip and also dropping videos about other interesting stuff. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. We'll see you on the next one with hopefully Woody this time around. Thanks, guys.